plug-in hybrids are starting to build momentum and popularity in Australia, and for good reason. They blend the benefits of an EV, as in cost savings, but they don't have the range anxiety of an EV. So you can drive this to work and back pretty much every day and not use any petrol at all. But if you want to go on a big road trip or something like that, you can still do that without worrying about where chargers are positioned around the country. This is the new Haval H6 plug-in hybrid. It's the first model to be sort of tuned and developed or semi-developed in Australia by GWM's new head of engineering, Rob Tribbiani. He used to work for Holden, but it does have the latest powertrain. It's a 1.5 litre turbo petrol plug-in hybrid, dual electric motors, combining to produce a pretty impressive 268 kilowatts and 760 Newton meters. That's sent through a kind of hybrid transmission, automatic transmission with all-wheel drive. In the mix is a 19.1 kilowatt hour battery, providing a range of 100 kilometers with the all-wheel drive version. The front-wheel drive version, a little bit less power, has a little bit more range. But yeah, you could actually commute with this every day and charge it, every second day or third day, depending on how far away from work you live, and not use any petrol at all. But on the weekends, if you want to go for a bit of a road trip or whatever, you can just drive it as a hybrid. As I've said with other plug-in hybrids though, if you are considering a plug-in hybrid, you get the best out of it by plugging it in. So if you're planning to buy this and just drive it around as a normal hybrid, as in never charge it or rarely charge it, then you're not going to get very good economy, because the engine, that little petrol engine, has to work hard to keep the batteries either topped up or supply energy for the electric motors. And you just don't get very good economy. Not as good as a conventional hybrid powertrain anyway. So yeah, if you are considering buying a plug-in hybrid, make sure you've got some facilities to charge overnight or whatever. I mean, you can just charge it in your garage, but if you live in an apartment block or something like that, it might be a bit tricky charging every second, third night. I mean, you could actually charge this once a week down the road at a local charging station, depending on, again, how far you live from work. You've got 100 kilometers range there, so you could actually do it that way. But again, I do recommend charging it regularly, or at least, just using that 100 kilometers range as part of your driving. Don't just drive it as a regular hybrid, because you might not be as impressed by the economy compared with some other rivals out there. In terms of charging, you've got both AC and DC options. Maximum DC charge rate is 34 kilowatts, which is pretty good. Maximum AC is 6 or just over 6 kilowatts. Although I had this plugged in at home on my 22 kilowatt AC charger, and it was showing on the app, it was maxing out at about 7.8 kilowatts, but that's, it can peak a bit higher, and then it sort of drops and settles down to a main rating. But the official rating is, 6 point something kilowatts. You'd have to agree, GWM products are starting to look pretty good. They've got their own kind of design theme going on. It's a little bit of Lexus NX in the taillights, just a bit, but they're all kind of copying each other these days, or at least looking what the competitors are doing and then blending in certain futuristic and modern elements. This color is quite nice as well. So it's metallic, soft green color. And at the front, you've got a distinctive grille, Haval grille, nice refined trimmings. Yeah, not too over the top, but still quite modern. This is the Ultra variant. It's got black 19-inch alloy wheels, and it's good to see they're wrapped in a brand of tyre that I've heard of before. They're not the ultimate tyres, but this is a conventional SUV, a budget-friendly SUV. You wouldn't expect it to get the best Michelin or Pirelli or anything like that. We do have some updates inside, including a big new 14-inch tablet-style screen stuck onto the dash there. But other than that, carries over the excellent practicality that the H6 has always offered. Dual level console with plenty of storage, big storage bucket in the middle as well, and a digital instrument cluster. Decent cabin ergonomics. You've got rake and reach adjustment for the steering column. It's not the best driving position for me. I'm 170 centimeters. Maybe my leg to torso ratio is off or something like that, but I can't get a perfect position. It still feels like I'm sitting too high and kind of looking down at the steering column, and it kind of feels like the steering column is, I don't know, coming out from the floor or something, and it's got this angle going, so you can't have the steering wheel nice and perpendicular or parallel with your chest. It's sort of always on this kind of angle, but it's, it's not bad. It's just not as good as, or as natural as some of the rivals that are out there for my height and torso to leg ratio anyway. And up on the screen here, we've got a lot of different options to play around with, and your apps down below as well. Look, it is a little bit complex and overwhelming at first, but once you get used to where everything is, it's actually not too bad. I like having the menu option down there so you can configure all your settings and so on. And you do have a drop-down area, so you can turn off your lane keep assist nice and quickly. I've got the head-up display turned off as well. I just prefer it. It's, you know, a great technology. I think all cars should have that. I just find it a little bit distracting. Maybe I'm getting a bit old and my eyes are starting to go, but yeah, you can turn that on and off nice and easily from the drop down here. Then your drive modes and so on. You've got a sport mode. You've also got different modes for the powertrain. So I've got it in HEV, it's a hybrid mode, and I'm forcing the power reserve, and it's maxed out at 80% battery because I'm going to go do performance testing and I want to get that battery as high as I can. I did charge it this morning, but not enough. I had to hit the road. But yeah, you've got lots of different options to fiddle around with there, including EV priority and then full EV mode. And up at the back, yeah, this is one of the most spacious mid-size SUVs on the market at the moment. Split climate vents, so that's good to see. A lot of the Chinese models have got just a single vent, so you can only spray the climate one way. Then two different options for charging, an almost completely flat floor, and then a little indented bit of the rear bench, just to provide a little bit more legroom for the middle seat passenger. Cup holders on a flip down armrest as well. You do kind of sit perched up a little bit, which is going to be handy for kids because it doesn't, you know, they're not going to be claustrophobic in the back, it's like they're sitting in a letterbox. I can see over the windowsill nice and easily. Material quality seems pretty good. It's got this sort of vinyl-y fake leather stuff all over the back of the seat. I prefer plastic on the back because I've got young kids and they just kick and scuff all this. So, you know, it might start to wear and tear if you've got a young family. It's not a major criticism or anything. It's just a little thing that I've noticed with two boys causing all sorts of trouble. You've got a full panoramic sunroof as well. And up at the back, you've got 560 litres of boot capacity, which is pretty much at the segment standards. Although when you pop down the rear seats, you've got 1445, which is a little bit low compared with some. You do have a 12-volt socket on the side there, and then under the floor, there's no extra storage, just a tyre repair kit. I think for grand touring purposes, if you're doing a lot of road tripping, having no spare tyre is a downside because it means you've got to be on the side of the road, fiddling around, trying to fit the goo or the glue into the tyre. I have done it before. It does work, or it can work, as long as the puncher is pretty much within the tread. If it's in the sidewall, then you don't really have any chance of using that goo stuff. You need to replace the tyre or replace the wheel. And that's where having a full-size spare wheel is better, but even a space saver, you can kind of get out of trouble. But with the electrical system, it just takes up room in the below the boot, and you can't fit a spare in there. I mean, you could always just buy one for a trip and just have it in the back, but it's going to take up a fair bit of boot space, obviously. Firstly, in terms of economy, we're averaging 6.2 litres per 100 kilometres. That's over a distance of 544 kilometres. Mark is doing the written review for this, so he's had it for a week. He lives in an apartment block where EV charging is not allowed, so that's not including regular charging. That's pretty much driving as a hybrid, although you've got to include the 100 kilometres of EV range. When he picked up the vehicle, the battery was full. So if you keep driving like this, that economy rating is going to go higher and higher. But 6.2, like, it's okay, but I've driven, you know, normal hybrids that can be, or have achieved lower than that. But it doesn't, you know, they don't have the capability of being able to be charged up and then driven as EVs. That's what I mean. You've got to actually charge this at least, you know, semi-regularly to maximize the absolute efficiency benefits. But I mean, you do get excellent performance and power, so which you don't get with a regular hybrid. So at the moment I am in the force charge mode, so that's probably going to climb even higher again because it's constantly using the engine to charge the batteries because I've told it to. But yeah, you don't have to drive in that mode. Even in this mode, you've got excellent performance, excellent pickup. It's pretty much like an EV. There's a little bit of a delay when you first put your foot down, but that's okay. I kind of prefer that. You don't want it to be super instant because that's not, you know, what we're all used to with petrol and diesel vehicles. It's not completely like a light switch on and off. You want there to be a bit of gradual pickup. Now, it's going to be hard to demonstrate this because you can't hear it, but I'll try and make some sort of noise when I hit the pedal. now. So there was just a sort of half-second delay before it took off. There are some few creaks and rattles, particularly from the doors, the door jams. You've got this little squeak happening. Now I don't know what that is. Sometimes, you know, you could blame that it's a brand new vehicle and the rubbers are just squeaking up against the frames, but they shouldn't really be moving that much to begin with. But overall, refinement is very good. Build quality is very good. There's no cheap and nasty plastics in here. It does feel like a, at least at the segment standards or even above in some ways. Now in terms of handling, the steering is not very precise. I'm not comparing it to a Ferrari, by the way. I'm comparing it to other mid-size SUVs. It just feels a little bit sort of soft and doughy when you first turn in. It's kind of a little bit late as well. There's a bit of sort of, not a dead zone, but you know, just not much happening on center. And when you start to turn a bit more, it kind of feels like the tires are flat almost. But yeah, the main sort of downside for me is the body sort of wobble. I do this little test with every vehicle I drive. Wait till we find a straight bit. But basically about 50, 60 kilometers an hour, I just sort of flick it back and forth, and you can feel the back end wagging like an excited dog when it first sees you when you get home from a holiday or something like that. And it just sort of catches up with itself a split second after you've made the steering movement. And that doesn't happen in many of the rivals, like even the Nissan X-Trail, which is set up to be pretty soft. It does that little test with more composure. It doesn't wobble around as much. But I think the sort of benchmark is the Hyundai Tucson and Kia Sportage. They're both, you know, soft and compliant on country roads like this, but still very dynamic and offer good handling when the road gets a bit twisty. I was doing the wobble test along here on the way down, and the stability control light was actually flickering. Let's see if I can get it. You can feel it kind of grabbing the back wheels to try and align or stabilize the vehicle. But then you do that in some of the rivals and they don't get to a point where they need to be stabilized in the first place. If that makes sense. They kind of just go where you tell it, and the body control remains very stable. Look, it's not a major concern, and out on country roads is probably the main area where you might notice it, but in the city and the suburbs, it just feels comfortable and you know, pretty smooth and relaxing. Look, overall, I think this is an interesting package. Very good value, $50,990. That's way lower than, or a lot lower than a lot of the rivals that have plug-in hybrid technology. I do like some of this, the touchscreen and all that, having all these different configurations and settings to play around with. It is a little bit complex and overwhelming at first, but once you get used to it, it's not too bad. Even though it doesn't have many physical controls, you do have climate control down here. You do have to sort of hit that and then adjust the fan speed and so on. It would be nice to have climate separate and then just have everything else up on the screen. I think that's kind of a good balance these days. But yeah, it is good to see like aircon on and off, air recirculation, and then your cameras and parking sensors and so on just there. So you can just quickly jump to those. But you do have that drop-down menu, as I said. So it's not too bad. I think the screen is a little bit too big in my opinion, but you know, that's the way these days. Everyone wants big screens. So I think that's not bad. Size, practicality is excellent, and yeah, value for money is probably the main attractions for this package. I would try to wait or hold off to get the local tune if you can. I mean, November production, so if you order one today, you're likely to get that anyway. It's just if there happen to be some sitting in the showrooms, just check the build date there to make sure it is November or beyond. All right, let's go out now and do the performance test and see what it goes like.